Welcome to the HBCU podcast. You're listening to episode 37. If you're an avid listener or just joining us for the first time, here we're joined by some awesome HBCU grads in the form of co-host and guest. We also focus on all the great things HBCU alumni are doing all over the world. On this episode, we speak with Jahylin Mckee. She's a graduate of Savannah State University. Jayhlin is the owner and lead publicist of J. Mckee & Co., having worked exclusively with Remy Ma, New York and LA Fashion Week, Calvin Klein, and BET, just to name a few. During this episode, we discuss her experience as an HBCU queen, and we talk about how she consistently sent her resume to Cardi B's Publicist and landed an internship and a job. Keep listening. It's the HBCU podcast.
Hi, I'm Jahylin Mckee, graduate of Savannah State University, class of 2017.
Well, Jayhlin, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today. We're really excited to speak with you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I read in your bio that you're from Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Yes, ma'am.
And basically, we're just going to jump right into the HBCU experience and what led you to Savannah State University.
So what led me to Savannah State University was actually a funny story. Being that I'm from Lawrenceville, Georgia, I really had my heart set on Spelman College. And it was, I want to say, maybe about the middle of July. That's when I finally got accepted because I was on the waiting list for about 3 months. And when I finally got accepted, my mom was like, that's cool and all, but we don't have Spelman money. And mind you, I purposely only applied for one school and one school only. I went to the Day in Your Life. I went to orientation. I did everything. And when she told me I was not able to go to Spelman, I was so devastated. Luckily, I was in this program called Upward Bound, and the relationships there led me to two options. And so my Upward Bound director was like, you have two options. You can go to Albany State or you can go to, no, he was like, you have three options. You can go to Albany State, you can go to Savannah State, or you can go to Fort Valley. And I was like, I don't know what any of these schools are. But they were like the other three schools that were in Georgia outside of the metropolitan Atlanta area. And I Googled all of them, and the only reason why I picked Savannah State was because it had a beach and they had palm trees on the campus. And I'd never been to Savannah, Georgia. I knew nothing about Savannah, Georgia. I was on the wait list for there. They didn't have housing, but I was like, you know what? Let me just take this risk and figure it out when I get there. So that's what I did. I packed up my bags, packed up my whole life, and I moved 4 hours away to Savannah, Georgia. Got there, I had no housing at all. I was stuck down there for 3 days, still had no housing. And it wasn't until the very last day when my mom was like, well, you know what, Jayhlin, like, you may have to just sit this year out and try again. And I was devastated. And this really nice lady, I walked up to her and I explained to her my situation. Didn't know she was a very powerful administrator at the time. She was like, look, if I give you this housing, like, you have to make the best of your HBCU experience. Like, I had to promise her that. And I made that promise to her, and she ended up being my mentor. And the rest was history from there.
Nice. Yeah, you know what I love about this, just like off the bat, you didn't even mention any other schools but HBCU. So shout out to you for just already having your eye
right
on HBCUs from Jump Street. That's awesome.
Yes. I wanted that college experience, that HBCU experience so bad.
Nice. And it's also interesting. You're from Lawrenceville. You're from Georgia in general. And Georgia is a big state, so I do want to preface that.
Right.
But it's surprising that you had not, visited Savannah before going to Savannah State.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. I don't even know why. Like, I've always been to Florida and I've always been to the surrounding areas, but for some odd reason, Savannah was just never on my radar.
Were any other individuals in your family actually, affiliated with any HBCUs that made you, I guess, have just an interest in all of the HBCUs that you mentioned for your college experience?
My cousin went to Morehouse, and that's how I got exposed to that life. That's how I got exposed to Greek life. That's how I got exposed to just HBCU culture. And I just wanted to be a part of that so bad because I grew up as an only child. And so I just love like everything that HBCU stood for. I love the history. I love the culture. And I just knew that like you know how you have something in your gut feeling and you just know that you have to be a part of it. Like
Yeah.
that was that for me.
Some of your favorite memories from undergraduate life, and what were some of your extracurricular activities, and what did you participate in at Savannah State?
Oh, okay. Oh, there's so many. So I think one of my favorite memory. Oh, I have way too many moments. Um, I'll name a few. I will say like my very first moment was kind of like that defining moment when I decided to stay at Savannah State because like I had a game plan. I was like, all right, I'm gonna come to Savannah State for a year. My sophomore year, I'm out and I'm transferring to Spelman. And I had someone who was helping me with that transition period. But I remember it was during fall break of my sophomore year, and I went to orientation for Spelman. And mind you, at the time, at this point, I had a 4.0. I had a job on campus, and back then, making $10 an hour, I felt like I was rich. Like I was just, and I was a residential queen by then, and I remember I was just like, I had to make a decision because I had to pay this application fee, and that was kind of like my defining moment where I was like I really love my HBCU because I'm not leaving. And the lady was like, "Are you serious? I did this. We planned this out for 2 years," and she was really upset about it. But at that moment, like I didn't care because I was like, I've just invested so much in this school,
Right.
and like this is something that I really, really want to be a part of. And so that was like one of my defining moments at Savannah State. And then I will say when I won Miss Savannah State University and when I pledged Delta. Those were like my two defining, well, those were like my two best memories at Savannah State.
Nice.
I have so many, but I would say those are like my
So many.
top
Those are the ones that like come right out. That's
two.
cool. I
Yeah.
think so many people, like you said, they don't want to be at school, and I think it's just it has a lot to do with all of us. For the most part, most of us who are college students, we enter, in the teens, whether that's 17, 18, whatever the case may be. And some of us had
Exactly.
never been away from home, and we all
hmm
usually have the same feeling
No, I was gonna say that's the other thing that I was struggling with because then that's like
because you're
one of
an
the
only
main
child.
reasons. I'm an only child, but then I was also in a high school, like a high school long distance relationship, and I was in for like 3 years. So I like really wanted to stay close to home, and that was like another factor why I wanted to stay. But I think that was the same year that I decided to stay at Savannah State because that's where I kind of started learning about myself and
Hmm.
learning, who I truly am as a person. And, of course, you leaving college, I mean, you leaving home, going to college, you try to make a point and like, I'm going to keep this long distance relationship and
Gonna keep my
it's going to
same
work.
friends.
Right. And no, like you don't realize how much you grow and you outgrow people and you outgrow relationships. And so
Yeah.
I'm really thankful that I stay. And I always say, Savannah State changed my life because honestly feel as though had I not went to Savannah State, like who I am today, my career path, just the way that I navigate throughout life and look at life would have just been completely different because there was
Absolutely.
so many people who just invested in me, and that's kind of where my village started. Like I have so many different moms and aunties and uncles and just an extended family of faculty and staff who just
Uh-huh.
poured so much into me.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because there's so many. At least I hope we reach some high school students with the podcast because that's one of our aims is
hmm
to share a lot of the information that some HBCU grads have gone through so they either learn from it, don't make the same mistakes. But yes, a lot of people who want to continue to be booed up. as
Yes,
they go into the
and
college
I
experience.
didn't realize how much it held me back. Like looking back at my freshman year, like I was always that's why I mean I wouldn't say that's why I had a 4.0, but like I did not want to do anything other. Like I had a goal. Like okay, on the weekends I was always the girl trying to find a way back home, trying to figure out who's going to Atlanta so I can ride back with them because I need to see my boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
And I just would not get involved. I mean, granted, I did a pageant, but I had a pageant background, but I wasn't really getting that HBCU experience that I really wanted. And I was just so caught up in a boy and trying to prove to everybody that, high school long distance relationships work and we're going to be high school sweethearts and we're going to be college sweethearts and it's just going to be, happily ever after. And like, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but when you have a certain plan, well, when God has a certain plan for you and you're expected to grow, this is a very pivotal time in your life where you are just realizing that you may not be the same person who you are. You will not be the same person who you were coming into college. And so, that requires, elevation requires separation. And I learned that the hard way actually, and it turned out really ugly. But again, I'm thankful for all the good and bad experiences that I went through.
Uh-huh.
And that situation, that was a very dark time in my college career, but it was also a start of a new beginning. And that's when I started growing a passion for PR and needed to get my mind off of, the only reason why I even wanted to start running for on campus positions was to keep myself busy. And I
Mhm.
started drowning myself in organizations and drowning myself in, staying on campus. Didn't want to go back to it. I hated Atlanta for a while because, that I knew that's where he was. And so, my advice to, girls is to just stay true to who you are and always trust your gut feeling and don't ever compromise your growth for somebody else,
Yeah.
especially at that young age. Like you have so much to see. Like my mom was saying, girl, you got the rest of your life to live and to be in a relationship. And at that time, you don't see that because I really thought that, me and that little boy was gonna get married. But now it's like, not to throw shade, but it's like, I'm looking at some of the things that I've accomplished and
Right.
and him being still in that same stage of, here we are, 4 years later, and you still are doing the same thing. It was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about because, sometimes when people go through breakups or whatever the case may be, they start drowning themselves in negativity and turned yours into positivity and started to do
Yes.
things with your organization. So earlier you mentioned that you were Miss Savannah State University. Was that 2016, 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me, how'd you get into, being an HBCU queen and just all of the things that you do associated with being an former HBCU queen?
Again, I was going through a mini depression at the time, and at that time, I was another residential queen. So I had went from being Miss Tiger Court to Miss University Village, and it was time to either run to be Miss Residential Hall Association, or if I wanted to transition over to, you know, Miss Junior, like officially representing the university. So at that time I was a mass communications major,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I started getting more in tune with what I wanted to do. And I made this bet on myself, and I was like, you know what? Like I'm kind of interested in PR, but I don't really understand PR like that. So I'm gonna make a bet on myself. And I know PR is about campaigns and stuff like that, but if I win Miss Junior, then I'm gonna stick to PR. Like that was the bet that I made on myself, and I ended up winning Miss Junior, and then that's when I started getting really more interested. So everyone else, like it was so funny, everybody is so in tune with the crown and the perks that you get with being a campus queen.
Mm-hmm.
I was fascinated by the plan and the production, the
Yeah.
logistics, the delegation, the sponsorships, the community involvement, like how I'm able to connect the dots. Just that just that planning process, event planning, leadership, PR, like relationship building, like all of those press, media
Right.
coverage, like not even realizing that I was doing a whole entire campaign on myself. And I always tell people, like, when they ask me, how did you get your first client? I always tell people, well, I was my first client. And Miss Junior was kind of like a fourth of it, but I literally put 200% in my campaign when I ran for Miss Savannah State. I had an app, like people were able to download an app, a like a Miss SSU app for me on there. Both Android and it was iOS compatible.
Mm-hmm.
I had a commercial. I had people. What did I had free haircuts. I had all type of stuff. I had a fashion show. I had a carnival. I you name it. I had it. Um, and it was just a really big production for me, and I was just really excited and fascinated by the results. And it was a very nerve wracking thing, but I never had a feeling like that before.
Yeah.
And so it also, took me out of my comfort zone in terms of public speaking and
Mm-hmm.
appearance, and being that representation for not only myself anymore, but for an entire university, because I was going to have to become that face. And so um, I think my campaign was just the highlight of my reign, because I never realized how many people I impacted, or I never realized how many people were watching, or how many people looked up to me. And I didn't realize how much support I had on campus, both by the students and by the faculty, just by being myself.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, when I won, it was just a very crazy experience, because I didn't realize that I was just evolving into this woman. And I realized that it was helping me prepare me for life. And I just learned so many different skills. I learned how to conflict resolution, event planning, leadership, all things, that all type of components that are now integrated into
Into
my
your
company
career. Yeah.
and into my career. Even when it came down to the Ebony magazine, we do this
Campus Queens
HBCU Campus
campaign.
Queens campaign, and just doing that campaign, and actually getting a chance to be featured in the magazine. Didn't even realize that was my first media placement. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I was gonna say for that. I used to be the director of public relations at Payne College, which is of
Oh
course another
wow.
HBCU,
I
and
know Pain.
I am very familiar with the amount of work and campaigning it takes to get a placement in that
Yes.
particular part of the magazine. So yeah, that's very very awesome and impressive. But I did want to ask you this,
Uh-huh.
being a campus queen, what give me an idea of the campus atmosphere when it comes to royal courts and campaigning and all of that, because I know at Claflin it was, I mean, very serious. I've heard the same thing from other
Yes.
HBCUs. So what did that
Just
look
very
like at
serious.
Savannah State? Like how many people did you run against? Yeah.
Okay. So I ran against and we take campaign season very serious at Savannah State. Like it's like the Hunger Games. Like
Oh boy.
everyone, like I was getting, to this day I'm still paying for it. I was getting credit cards
Oh
in my
wow.
name, trying to get new outfits. I had a glam squad. Like I was a real diva. Like I had an assistant. Like it was crazy. And I ran against two girls, and it was really interesting because the two girls at the time, I wasn't Greek, and two of the girls were. Well,
Hmm.
one was a Greek queen. She was an alpha queen. She was Miss Black and Gold, and the other girl was an AKA. And so it was just very interesting because we hadn't had Greeks run. Greek life was just now coming back on our campus,
Hmm.
and so it was just kind of it was real intense because everyone thought that everyone thought that I was kind of outnumbered because so many girls wanted to be AKA on our campus, and so many girls wanted to be Miss Black and Gold. So I knew I had to step my A game up. And it's kind of like you kind of already know who wants to be campus queen after a certain time,
Hmm.
just based off of the community involvement, the other campus queen agenda that you may have. And so, it was people were starting to catch on like, okay, like I'm pretty sure Jayhlin is gonna run for being Miss Savannah State. So when it came down to it, everything mattered. Like everything mattered. Everybody is watching. You're literally in a fishbowl at this point. And that's why I tell people all the time, you literally have to understand what you're signing up for, because like all eyes are on you 24/7 nonstop. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in the day and age where social media took evolve in it, like they're really watching. And
Yeah.
so like from the minute you walk in, kind of like a declaration where you go to the entrance meeting, you got your suit on. So, you had your suit, your stockings, your heels, your pearls, and making sure you're speaking well, making sure you look the part, and you making that first impression is everything, and it kind of sets the tone, just based off of how confident you are in yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
if the competition is really going to get to you. And I'm a very competitive person, so I did all type
So
of
that played
sports.
in your
And
favor.
yes. And so, the games begun, and it's so funny because what really set the tone was at Savannah State, campaign season would start at 12 o'clock at night, right after spring break ended. So I would have like secret meetings with my campaign team. I had like over 300 people on my campaign team. I had classification ambassadors, so I had freshman ambassadors, sophomore ambassadors, junior ambassadors, and it was a requirement that a third of my team had to come back on campus early and had to be on campus at 11 o'clock at night, because at 12 o'clock at night, that's when my posters, that's where the banners would go up, and that's when campaign season started. So we rented walkie talkies, trucks, ladders. Like I had people in place. Like, okay, are you at this location? We did a walkthrough of the we did a walkthrough of the campus. did a
Serious.
venue did a venue inspection. I had people at their posts because I wanted to have the best spots on campus.
Absolutely.
And so I'm laughing now because I was this was not like I had three campaign managers. I needed to make sure somebody made sure I was eating. Someone had to make sure I was at the event. I had a street team. I had a social media team. Like, I did okay, at 3 o'clock we posted, at 9 a.m. we posted, we flood. Like it was no game. It was no game. And it was so fun. Like that was the best part about it. But, like I said, once I won, I had to realize that, now this is what I'm signed up for. And, I'm not only representing myself anymore. Everything matters. Everything counts. How I make my rain is how I make my rain. And I had to understand that, but what you also have to remember is at the end of the day, you're a student first.
Mm-hmm.
And you came there to get an education. You can't get
Absolutely.
caught up in that. And so that's why, I always preach to people now. And I mentor so many of these different campus queens. And I tell them, like, this your senior year, the start of life after graduation starts now. And so it's really important for people to start those internships and, start looking at a plan after graduation, because you don't want to be the campus queen who doesn't have a plan after graduation, because at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
people are still watching. Like people and then especially if you had a successful reign and you made a lasting legacy on your campus, they're going to naturally want to gravitate towards you and keep up with you and still support you. And so, and I tell people all the time, everybody's watching. The people who said you couldn't do it, the people who said you could do it, and the people who are waiting for you to not make it happen. And so it's up to you to, kind of, keep your head on straight and, remain consistent and truly walk in the plan that God has for you.
Nice.
So that's what I try to preach now. And
Okay.
I just love the fact that it's a full circle moment, because like I'm utilizing the gift that God gave me, and I'm putting it back into, the HBCU campus Kings and Queens conference, and I do PR for them now. So it's kind of like a form of mentorship for me to reach back to these girls, but at the same time, still be able to do the things that, I'm really passionate about. And
So tell us a little bit more about the HBCU Queens and Kings Conference.
yeah, so every year, when you're elected into these positions, you have opportunities to network and to just get accustomed to other campus kings and queens through different leadership events and conferences and trainings and workshops. And so there's NASAP, that is composed of SGA presidents, the MPHC, kings and queens, class queens, everyone. Whereas the HBCU Kings and Queens Conference, there's two. There's a tailor-made one, and then there's a one hosted by Miss Dale Williams and Mr. Anthony Jones, and they've been doing it for 17 years. And so that's the one that my school registered us for. And so every year, depending on the court. So the dynamics of Savannah State changed. So back when I was Miss Junior and I went to the conference, it would just be us, the class queens and the queen of the university. Now that we have a Mr. Savannah State University, they only bring Mr. and Miss Savannah State. And so throughout this weekend long, quote unquote retreat, quote unquote conference, you get a chance to meet other campus, newly elected campus leaders, kings and queens in particular. Their class queens come, class kings come as well, and it's just kind of like a safe haven, a safe space for you to kind of receive that proper training, that proper kind of that motivation and kind of like that mentorship through different workshops and seminars, and that proper training of do's and don'ts, and why you were called into this position, and kind of working out those kinks and planning your coordination. Maybe sometimes some schools are larger than others, so it's a very integral part for some of these HBCUs to receive this training, because everyone doesn't have that same training. So it kind of gives everyone this equal playing field to kind of utilize the same information and get access to the same network of people, because the conference brings so many different people from all different paths of life that are, predominantly HBCU alum, and they've gone and done amazing things, and they're in the entertainment industry, they're in the etiquette industry, they're in, you learn so many different parts. They have an etiquette dinner where they show you how to properly, handle business etiquette, dining etiquette, the do's and don'ts of a queen, do's and don'ts of a king, making sure that you're properly planning events on campus, because, service is one of the main things. It's key. So the proper undergarments, the from the pantyhose to the Spanx to the pearls, when it's appropriate to chew gum, when it's not appropriate to chew gum, what the do's and don'ts of a football game. Everyone knows a football game is so important. Resources for coordination, how to find the proper dress, what type of crown do you need to wear, so many different parts of it.
And
but
I think that's amazing, because the time that I did spend, one just at an HBCU as a student, and then working at an HBCU, as you mentioned before, every HBCU does not have equal resources, equal staff. Everybody doesn't have someone designated to, watch over their queens. You'd be surprised. There are some queens who are just, doing it on their own.
Everyone doesn't have the same budget.
Absolutely. So that's an amazing opportunity for people to be a part of.
And it's another way, and it's another form of a sisterhood and a brotherhood for those, who not everyone wants to come to school and want to be Greek, So it's just another way to kind of form that bond and just to enhance your HBCU experience.
So how do people get more information about this conference?
So what you can do is you can follow us on Instagram. I handle the PR efforts for the conference. And so what you could do is, if you have any questions, or if you want to be a part, if you want to be a speaker, a vendor, a sponsor, you can visit our Instagram page at HBCU Kings and Queens, or you can also visit the website at www.hbcukingsandqueens.com.
Nice. And if you guys missed any of that, I'll make sure it's on the website, hbcupodcast.com, as well as in the show notes. Now, Jayhlin, we're going to roll right into you and your career, because obviously you've mentioned several times during our conversation that you're a publicist. And I definitely want to talk to you about your major while at Savannah State in mass communications, and then were your aspirations during your major to actually be doing what you're doing now?
I always tell people when I started off at Savannah State, I was an English major, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life.
That's usually the
um,
major you choose when you're like, I don't know
that's
yet.
the safe major, right? It's the safe major. I knew I hated math. Well, I didn't hate math, but
I
I just
did.
I highly disliked math, and I was so glad because I was an English major. I only had to deal with college algebra one semester out of my whole entire college career. I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't have any love for science. So I knew if I couldn't do anything else, I could talk and I can write. And so I started off as an English major. And the more and more that I started getting involved on different organizations on campus, whether that pertained to mass comm or whether that pertained to just, leadership development and wanting to just interact with my peers, I kind of found myself one day signing up to help out and volunteer for this JMC award show. And JMC stands for Journalism and Mass Communications College at Savannah State. And so that was kind of like my first time ever being exposed to like the media, being exposed to mass comm and mass comm in action, really. And I fell in love with the production process, the planning process, kind of just really turning a vision into reality and seeing this. It was originally what JMC would do is have an award. Like they would just do awards at the end of the year and highlight different students in the journalism program and just give them these awards. But the thing about it was nobody would ever never come to this award ceremony. Whereas I had an adjunct professor at the time. Her name was Tasha Adams Fox, and she had been in the entertainment industry. She had gone to do amazing things and worked with so many different people in the entertainment industry. And just the way she carried herself, just the way she spoke, just the way that she shared her experiences, I instantly gravitated towards that. And I said, this lady needs to be my mentor. I want to do what she does, and I'm gonna bother her until she takes me in. And so that's exactly what I did. And she took me underneath her wing, and I just got exposed to so much. And that she really helped me identify what it is that I wanted to do, because I always knew what I wanted to do,
Hmm.
but it was always hard to kind of identify my niche.
Yeah.
And so when I started helping out with this JMC award show, it was kind of like the BET award show of the journalism program.
Uh-huh.
And so it was so cool, and I just loved it. And so from there, that was kind of like the start of like my PR journey. And it was just really funny because at the time I had joined this program outside of Savannah State. It was this college prep program called Management for Leadership Tomorrow, and it was this minority program that helped minorities get connected with Fortune 500 companies and help them gain internships that would eventually lead into full-time positions.
Hmm.
So I would do that outside of Savannah State, which will require me to do a lot of traveling. So I landed my very first real internship with that program, and I got an opportunity to live in the Silicon Valley. I was working at this software technology company called Intuit, and I was doing talent acquisition. And I didn't care what it was. I knew that it was kind of on the terms of being like a college ambassador. It was kind of
Hmm.
like being an admissions counselor in a sense, and just basically me doing what I do best, talking to people, loving people. But it was for this technology company. And so I did that. They paid for my housing. They gave me a free MacBook. They gave me everything. I was getting paid like $25 an hour as an intern. It was just a great experience
Hmm.
for the benefits. But when I got in the role, I was like, all right, this is not what I thought it was gonna be. I think I was just more so fascinated at the fact that I would be living in California for a summer. And it was just a very pivotal point in my college career where I felt like I was settling. I did not want that to be my life after I graduated from college. I just had this amazing college experience, and then for me to go from being that girl and just going into a role that just made me unhappy, I knew I couldn't do that. I couldn't live with myself. So I said no with no plan, and Um, After that, I had $500 after graduation, and I packed 2 bags, and I moved to New York. And I said I was going to figure it out, and I was going to become the celebrity publicist. And my homegirl at the time she lived in New York. She let me live on her couch, and she was like, "I'll help you. You stay here as long as you like, and I'll help you get on your feet." And that's when I landed my first kind of entertainment job in the entertainment industry, working at Hot 97, volunteering for Summer Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I ended up getting a job at Hot 97. And then from there, I ended up working for Remy Ma. And so I was working with her directly, and I ended up being her social PR girl. And I would travel with her. I would be on sets of music videos, and I would be on sets of Love and Hip Hop, and I was just exposed to that part of the industry, and I loved it. I loved it so much, and I was like, yes, like this is what I was supposed to be doing. Mind you, I was broke. I didn't have any money. People weren't really understanding what I was doing. I just knew like I needed to throw myself out there and take a risk. And I always said that if it didn't work out, I could always come back home. But
Mm-hmm.
when I didn't have any kids or I didn't have a husband or anything, I'm like, I'm gonna give it a shot. So I
Oh,
did
Lord. Are
that.
you a Sagittarius?
No, I'm a Virgo. I'm a Virgo, and so, and mind you, me being a Virgo and doing this, it killed me because we are perfectionists. So
Yeah.
just trusting the process was just so hard for me because I didn't have my life planned out. But I promise you, it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And from there, that's when I started getting more in tap with PR and started looking for PR mentors, and just volunteering and throwing myself out there where I could, feel I can feel where I was being easily reciprocated and received. And it was starting to become a mutually benefited relationship with these professionals. I wanted to be a part of something that poured into me as much as I poured into them. So then I started doing freelance PR, and that's where I started working with Klein, and I got exposed to working with New York Fashion Week, doing the PR side of that. Just seeing the production with that just fascinated me even more. And then I started harassing Cardi B's publicist at the time. Well, she's still her publicist, but at the time, I kept saying I love the fact that she turned Cardi B into this this Instagram sensation, into this icon, and I just love the thought process into it. I'm like, I don't know who this lady is, but I need to be a part of that team. And so I reached out via Instagram, and I would just harass her every day, and well, not harass, but I was very persistent.
Yeah.
I would email her my resume. I want to say 3 times a day from like October into January. And I would DM her. It was so funny because she would respond back to my DMs, and it was just hilarious because I still wouldn't get an email back, but she would just, say little cute things like, "Oh, hey girl, thank you, this and that, like my message." And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm almost there. She's gonna reach back out." And it wasn't until she was looking for interns in LA for an event, and she was telling people to DM them their resume, and all of a sudden I magically became an intern who lived in LA. And I finally got the call to be at the event, and mind you, I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to find my way, but thank God for my village because they definitely helped me pay for my flight. And so I ended up flying out to LA, and luckily I knew a soror out there because the week before I got the internship with Cardi B's publicist, I flew out there for LA Fashion Week. I was just throwing myself out there at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a soror in an Uber, and she told me if I ever come back to LA, I could stay with her. And so literally a week after that, I hit her up. I'm like, "Hey, soror, can I still stay with
That's
you?"
what sisters are for.
And that's what sisters are for. And so she let me stay with her, and I went out there and I made it work. And now the rest is history. And I'm a junior publicist with her junior publicist, and it's just a really amazing experience. And I'm still growing in this industry, and I'm growing in with my own business, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm failing forward. But at the end of the day, like, I'm passionate about what I do, and I truly love everything that I'm doing. So that's where I'm at now with PR.
I love when, the guests that we have on here are able to share advice with what I hope are some of our listenership. So, what are some of the skills and lessons, I guess, that came from you just being one interning, one in Silicon Valley, but also going after your internships? Because usually there is, people who just kind of go, they look on with their career development department, then they look for internships, they apply. But you've gotten one where you probably took that path, and then you have others where you just really, went after it. So what kind of lessons and advice, I guess, do you have for people who are, finishing school, ready to get some work experience and ready to gain some internships?
One thing that I will tell people who are listening is you really have to, when you're following your dreams and you're trying to make it happen, you have to kind of just have tunnel vision. And you have to be consistent, and you have to be very persistent. But not only that, you have to go the extra mile, because one thing that I feel like kept me in the door was the fact that I had this mentality that I was going to outwork everybody and get it by any means necessary. And one thing that I say now with my company, with J. McKee and Co. is, here at J. McKee and Co., we turn water into wine. And I feel like, that's all that I did from the time that I left being a high school student, going into college, and not having a plan and taking that risk to Savannah State. I turned water into wine from the point where I took a risk. I said no to the Silicon Valley, and I moved to New York. I turned water into wine. And even now, the things that I do on a day-to-day basis for my clients, I'm constantly turning water into wine. So that's my advice that I would say.
Nice. Yeah, that is, I've heard that from so many people, especially going into their HBCU experience, making something from nothing, whatever the case may be. So that's solid advice. With you being a publicist and having clients and essentially an entrepreneur, what are some of the misconceptions, would you say, that people that are associated with being a publicist or an entertainment publicist? What is something that people think is a part of your job that really isn't, or is fun that really isn't?
I think a lot of misconceptions that happen with PR and the PR industry is that we're managers or we're magicians. Everything is at a snap of a finger, and I don't think people, number one, realize that everything is not guaranteed in PR. The only thing that we can do is making sure that your brand is being visible to the media. And we do that through different strategies and through different campaigns and different tactics. But we can pitch you all day long, but if it's not the time or the moment, or you're not a best fit, then the only thing we can do is keep striving and to keep pushing into a different direction. And so, one day, you may get a call from Rolling Out saying that they want to feature you on the front cover of their magazine, and the next minute they can email you back in the same breath and say, oh, never mind, we have to push this back until next year. And so that's just the reality of it. And with PR and as a publicist, it's just so much research that goes into place, so much creativity, so many hours of planning, and so many long nights, late nights, and early mornings. And oftentimes, what you may see with publicists is we may post the final result, but you didn't see the months in advance that it took to get to that point.
Right.
So yeah, those are some misconceptions.
On the HBCU podcast, I always like to talk to guests about giving, and giving back is one of the things Savannah State pushes. I know this. I was actually on a panel with Dr. Dozier, and it was about alumni giving, and she had some great things to say. She shared just so much about giving back and Savannah State's focus on giving back. So with that being said, what does giving back to Savannah State University look like for you?
I believe giving back to Savannah State University look like to me is still staying connected to some of the organizations on campus and just helping out in any way that I can with those particular organizations. But not only that, still being that mentor that some of the students need. Like you'd be very surprised. I have so many different um, people who constantly reach out to me on a day-to-day basis, and I actually set aside a day that I just dedicate to just answering any text messages, any emails,
Oh, nice.
scheduling calls, just to, making sure that my people are good or my people are okay. And I'm constantly finding internships and I'm constantly sending them back. I'm constantly staying connected with the mass comm program, making sure that they're okay, making sure that the students there are set for life after graduation.
What do you say, or what advice do you have for individuals who haven't quite made their way back to giving to Savannah State yet?
Something that I would say to someone who hasn't made their way to giving back, is to try to, if you can't necessarily give back directly to the school, try to give back to someone who you connected with while you were there at the time, seeing if they need anything. Cash App goes a very long way. I know some of my mentees, they hit me up and they're like, "Oh, I'm a student orientation leader this year and we have dues. Can you help me out with anything?" And I know if I can't necessarily give back to the school, I'll try to at least give back to them in whatever activity or whatever, if they're trying to invest in themselves in any type of way to make their campus better. I try to invest in them in that way.
Nice. Now, we talked earlier because we hopped right into it, but we didn't talk about homecoming and what your favorite memories are. And we didn't talk about your beloved sorority. So
Okay.
definitely feel free to share some of your favorite homecoming memories, because I'm sure you had a different vantage point being an HBCU queen.
Oh my gosh, I was so tired. I was so tired during homecoming, but it was so much fun. I would definitely say one of my favorite memories about homecoming was the fact that my parents were very supportive of me and they never missed a beat. They never missed a homecoming, all the way from when I was just a little old residential queen to me being the queen of the university. It was always a big deal for them.
Hmm.
And I would definitely say just when I was Miss Savannah State, it was just, I literally got no sleep, but it was so much fun. And I remember one time I had to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, face be like looking like it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but really it was like the middle of the night. And we had the interview with like Channel 11 on the football field, and like again that was exciting for me because that was another form of PR,
Yeah.
and just doing like interviews and things of that nature. And so that was just really exciting for me. Now, in terms of like my sorority and things of that nature, that was just an experience of a lifetime because um, on our campus, we hadn't had Delta's event. Well, for those of you who are just now catching up, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Not fall. I'm sorry, Spring 17. And one of my favorite memories from that is the fact that I gained 24 other sisters, and just
Mm.
being an only child, like that was just very important to me. And it was also important the fact that I got a chance to be a part of something that was bigger than myself. And not only that, it was just even more special because at Savannah State we hadn't had deltas on our campus in 5 years,
Oh, wow.
and so we were the resurrection line. And I got a chance to cross the same semester that I was Miss SSU in, the same semester that I was graduating. So you can only imagine
Right. Really
the
exciting.
chaos that was going on, but it definitely made me a stronger person. And I feel like if I could do that, I can do anything.
Nice.
And to this day, I'm just so grateful for the sisterhood because me and my line sisters, we talk literally almost every day. And it's literally it's not just about The sorority for us is far past that. It's just, making the little things like one of my line sisters just had a baby, and me and my other line sister, we drove all the way to Macon, to make sure that we were there for the birth of her child. Or
Hmm.
so it's just the little things like that, that are just building these lasting, long relationships, and this genuine and this real sisterhood with women who we all kind of have the same common goal and the same kind of vision for Delta, and kind of just constantly doing the work of Delta, and just like I said in the beginning, just understanding that it's just bigger than us,
Hmm.
and it's just the fact that I'm adding my small contribution, just means the world to me. And if I can impact someone or reach someone on a larger platform through my organization, I feel as though my job has just been completed.
If you could encourage any student to choose an HBCU, what would you say?
If I could encourage a student to attend an HBCU, I would say that you are not a number. And you are definitely joining a village of people who genuinely care and support you way beyond the classroom and way beyond those gates of the university. And it's, to this day, it's professors who I'm close with and who I've established long lasting bonds with. And even throughout my college experience, it was just a great feeling knowing that if I wasn't feeling good, if I had something really going on with me,
Hmm.
I could just pick up the phone and call my professor and be like, "Hey, this is going on." And they care about me as a person at that point and not just a student.
Nice. What is coming up for Jayhlin that we should be on the lookout for? And definitely share anything that you're involved in, and what people can and where people can find you, where listeners can find you online or on social media.
I am launching a platform for PR. It's called Talk to My PR, actually, and I'm so excited about it because it's for the inspiring publicists, it's for the current publicists, and it's just kind of creating that community of PR for millennials who necessarily may not understand what PR is, and
Hmm.
kind of letting it be kind of like a motivational factor in terms of people who are seeking a publicist. That's just the platform that I'm creating for my company, because I definitely want to move my company not only just as a entertainment or a small boutique PR agency, but I also want to create different sub brands within it. I also have a love for um, young Black women, so I definitely want to start up my nonprofit organization that I do have in the works. I also not only plan to give back in terms of working with the HBCU conference, but I also have plans to help do HBCU Royal Consulting, where I'm helping, and I'm giving back in that sense of helping any HBCU student, starting off with HBCU students. They have aspirations of being the Miss of their university, or the Mister, or SGA president. I definitely want to start up that consulting and start up that conversation of helping them in that regards. And so those are some of the things, some of my projects, long-term projects that I have in the works that I'm just really excited about. And where you can find me and stay connected with me is on Instagram. I'm kind of on Twitter, but I'm kind of not. But the main source where you can find me at is on Instagram, and it's Life as Jayhlin. That's LIFEASJAHYLIN. Again, that's Life as Jayhlin. So, yep, that's all I have for you.
Nice. So, you guys, if you missed any of that, don't worry. You can find all the information that Jayhlin just shared at thehbcupodcast.com, as well as in the show notes. So, we'll have it all there. No need to worry. Jayhlin, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate your time today and you just taking the time to I pour into our listeners because I feel like you had so much great advice, and I'm always really excited to speak to, recent grads as well, who can probably relate, a lot more people can relate to.
Right, right. No, thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoy it. And if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out. I love this podcast. I love everything that it stands for.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
wish this was something I had when I was in high school or I was in my freshman year of college.
Oh, thanks so much. Thank you so much for listening to the HBCU podcast. We have so much more HBCU content on the way, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, and visit us at thehbcupodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at thehbcupodcast. Like us on Facebook. We love you for listening. Until next time.